Buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias una vez más por
Good morning, everyone, once again for being here in this webinar session. In this case, we have an Ask Me Anything on super apps, mini programs, and mini apps. The dynamics will be as usual. First, we will introduce our speakers. There will be a brief presentation on the subjects, and then we will move on to the Q&A session. For that Q&A session, please feel free to turn on your mics, your cameras, and ask the questions yourselves. Remember that this webinar is being interpreted into English, so if you need to hear English, you can just click on the interpretation icon in the bottom of the screen. And so without further ado, Jaime, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Aníbal. I will share screen now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this AMA. This Ask Me Anything session is based on 3 deep dives that were released after the GeneXis event, the Enterprise Low Code for 2021. These talks on mini apps, super apps, and mini programs. They are available on our website. I reckon that many of you might have seen them already, but if you haven't, please do, so that you can delve into what we're going to be talking about today. As Aníbal was saying, our idea is to make a very short presentation on the topic, which happens to be a very interesting topic. Little is said in the West about this, and so we could say that perhaps GeneXus is at the forefront in this sense. And then, of course, we can open the Q&A session. So let's talk about the background of super apps, mini apps, and mini programs. And for that, it's important to understand a bit of what the service consumption is like in the West via apps, and how that is different from what's been happening, for example, in China. We are very used to, for example, whenever you need to hire transportation via an app, you choose between 1 or 2 apps. You can have Cabify or Uber, depending on where you are, and then you will hire the service through that application specifically created for that. Then, for example, if you want to hire a food delivery service, you're going to choose a different app from the previous one, and that app is going to bring food to your home. And again, it's an ad hoc application, right? But if I want to talk to Luciano or Pablo, I want to chat with them, then of course I have a number of applications that I can use. I've got WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Skype, and so on and so forth. So the service consumption in our Western societies is very saturated. We have 1 or more application for each need that will solve your problem. That is quite different from what's been happening in China and more in Asia as a whole. In China, when we want to look up some information or hire a service, you don't go to the website and get the information of your supplier, or you don't even go to your App Store or Play Store to download a native application. They go to a super app, which is an application such as Baidu, WeChat, or Alipay, and they can find through mini apps or mini programs the solution to all the services that they need, to all their needs. So it's very different from what happens in the West. WeChat is, let's say, at the forefront of this super apps phenomenon in China with thousands of millions of users. And it started as a messenger application that then integrated other services. Now, to understand why this is happening in China and more in Asia, we need to understand the mobile first concept. This concept came about of how internet was developed in China, which is very different from what happened in the West. In this side of the world, we started with desktops, and we accessed internet through the browser and then web pages, and then we got to smartphones. In China, however, because of the way in which the country was socio-economically developing and the growth of the middle class in the last couple of years, we can say that society basically landed on the world of the internet through mobile devices. They skipped all the other stages. So everything in China is thought about first in terms of mobile. They first think how everything is going to run on mobile devices. So super apps such as WeChat are ecosystems of other mini applications that are also native applications that are embedded in these super apps. And they provide different sorts of services, such as social media, food delivery, e-commerce, ticket sales, shared services, and so on and so forth. So try to understand what a super app is. It's a native app that allows users the possibility to solve many problems. For each problem, it provides a mini app that solves it within the super app. And those mini applications that we will see that many of them are called mini programs are dynamically loaded according to the user's request. So this mini app is nothing but a small app that lives within a super app and solves a problem. And as we said, it's dynamically loaded. This means that when you download a super app like WeChat, it doesn't mean that the millions of mini apps and mini programs that exist in that super app will be downloaded in your phone at that time. No, you will discover those mini apps in that super app through different discovery stages that we can delve into a little further later on. And they dynamically load according to your requests and your needs. So now we're going to tell you a bit about what we've been doing in GeneXus in this sense. We had a very specific situation in GeneXus. Considering the work that we had been doing with other generators, for the last 10 years, we've had the technology that today is perfectly applied to this new super app mini app reality, which is a very trending topic in Asia, for instance, but little is said in the West about this. You will see that, for example, in Latin America, GeneXis is the one that is talking mostly about super apps and mini apps, you know, when we have our deep dives, talks, and some papers that are posted on our website. So in GeneXis, considering that we are in this position of privilege, we have been working on two different areas. One is super apps and mini apps, and Pablo will tell you a bit more about that. And then in a mini program generator that is specifically for the WeChat ecosystem. And Luciano will tell you more about that. So we believe that there is an opportunity for the GeneXus community, and that is what we would like to introduce you to today. So now I'm going to hand the microphone over to Pablo. Thank you, Jaime. Thank you, everyone. As Jaime was saying, in GeneXus, we've been working at these two fronts. One is the possibility to directly generate from GeneXus both super apps and mini apps. Not only the possibility to create mini apps for already established super apps, such as the case of WeChat, which has its own technology, but to be able to create super apps themselves, to create those ecosystems. So we believe that there are a number of scenarios that allow you to apply this, specifically in the West. So Jaime, please, next slide. So we will have the possibility of building these super apps, which are a host native application that will be found in your stores. And that application gives you the chance to dynamically load mini apps. Those mini apps will also be generated with GeneXus in the same way that nowadays you're generating native apps with GeneXus. You will have a generator that will say, okay, I want to generate this mini app, and you will indicate which is the version, in which super app it belongs, and so on and so forth. And this super app will have an API where it will be able to have a query of all the mini apps that are approved for that super app. So we have a company that defines what the super app is going to consist of, and it will open the ecosystem so that others can develop mini apps, and that will be cataloged in a provisioning server. And so you will see all the mini apps available according to different discovery criteria. And when the user sets up one of the mini apps or selects one of the mini apps, they will dynamically load. And for this, you're using technology that we've had in GeneXus since the beginning of smart device generation, which is the possibility to render these applications natively. The user will use the mini app, and once that it's done with it, it's discarded. It will not be downloaded from the store. It's only dynamically loaded. And once they've finished using it, they are, you know, they don't remain downloaded. You see the yellow icons. Well, it's very likely that they will interact with other services of the super app. So the user is going to be registered in the super app if it's an application that manages payments, for instance, all the payment information be it credit cards or different transactions. It will be hosted in the super app, which is the application that the user trusts. And when they're running a particular service through a mini app, that will connect with the super app. And it's the super app that's going to be the one in charge of making that payment happen. Once that is done, it sends the information back to the mini app. Next, please. This is an example that we will soon show you that will be available for you to take a look at. These are some applications developed with Genexis. This is the e-banking demo that we usually work with in different scenarios. It's an application that simulates a fintech or any kind of payment application that on top of the more traditional services that you could find in an application of this sort, such as user information, credit card information, money transfers, electronic payments, what you have in there is, well, you have mini apps. So they can show you, for example, the different benefits and offers that they have with different credit cards or debit cards. It will directly show you the mini apps that are available. You can see that these are mini apps on the top, and these are services that the users can add to make a payment through the application. You can see that then you have some banners that allow you to, make some mini apps more relevant, such as weekly offers and stuff like that. And then you can show places that have mini apps and that are close to where the user is located. So when the user runs any of them, you open an application that could have a visual identity that is completely different from this one and that it's specific to that company, for instance. So you have an application that is a food truck to buy ice cream, or another one to buy coffee or food, a sort of Starbucks application. And so the user goes there, and next, please, Jaime. This is, for instance, the app for coffee. They select a product. They select the products that they want to buy. And once they are done with the buying process, when they check out, basically, you see that you have the third image, you have the pay button, you click on that, that will connect to the super app that has all the payments information for the user, and the super application will return to the mini app whether or not that transaction was successful. So for example, you can get a QR code if it was successful, and that would be the next step to pick up your product. So mini apps would be solving very specific cases, and the user doesn't really need to learn how to use a new application. These are fast. That is why they are dynamically loaded. They cannot be heavy by definition. And as I told you, scenarios are really varied because you have different mini apps which represent different shops or stores, and you have an ecosystem of partners that are integrated, but it also allows you to have an increasing development of your solution. Instead of, for example, having a company creating a large app, what they can do is they can create one super app, and then they can load different modules or features or functionalities to that system in the form of mini apps, which would be, which would belong to one company. These are some examples, just to give you an overview. I don't want to go into too much detail right now on how this works or the architecture. So if you have any questions afterwards, of course, we can answer that. Now I'm going to hand the microphone over to Luciano for him to tell us a bit about mini programs and how they're different from super apps and mini apps in GeneXus. Thank you, Pablo. The term mini program kind of emerged in China or in Asia. It's this what you see in the screen are the three big tech giants in China that defined the extensibility system, how to work with this platform. I would like to add a bit more to what Jaime said, because I think it's cool to see how these applications moved to what is considered today a super app, because they come from completely different backgrounds. Once WeChat had a strong user base, a lot of companies began to take an interest, and they started adding different services to their platform until they came to a point in which they decided to extend their development mechanism. And that is how they came up with the mini program term, with a very clear scheme of how to extend and integrate to these platforms. Also, you have Alipay. Ali in Chinese means wallet. And so it's an application that the first thing that it did was to reach out to banks and enter into agreements so that you could easily make payments or purchases or, do a lot of transactions from your phone. And from that, it generated a very strong movement that, of course, resulted in a lot of services being added, and it became a new super app platform. And then we have Baidu, which is this search browser giant in Asia, as well as AI and mapping and stuff like that. And because of the number of users that use the platform, was able to scale up and reached an ecosystem that allowed them to, dip their toes in this world of ecosystems for many apps and super apps. And let's say that why not in China? The way to integrate these platforms is by developing mini programs always on top of already existing platforms. This was so successful that I would say that we have between 10 and 15 platforms that want to be present in this market. Jaime, maybe you want to change the slide? Thank you. So in GeneXus, we're assessing this with a low-code generator that allows you to learn a property, and the knowledge that you have is generated in a mini program. In this case, for example, we are exploring different scenarios, and the development of these components implies learning a lot of things from scratch, because even though it's very similar to front-end development, to some extent, the WeChat team developed something new. So we are working on the generator based on the Angular GeneXus Angular generator and extending it for it to be functionally fit to run in the WeChat mini program infrastructure. This is the simulator. It's an application that is similar to the ones that Pablo showed you. You just activate a property and you have the project, and you can run it in the simulator, which is one of the tools that provides this platform provides precisely to make any kind of development. This is another example that is available. As you can see, it's really easy to generate this in this new platform and this new channel as part of this multi-experience. Adding to what Pablo was saying, something that is quite interesting about this kind of platforms is that the size of what is loaded onto the platform is restricted, because they want to prioritize speed in terms of downloading, and the transaction from one mini program to the other should be as efficient as possible. So how are we doing with this generator? It's not yet in the sales channel. It's a distributed team, because we have some stuff from GeneXis, and the team that is developing that is technically developing, that is a partner of ours, Digital Project. We have Orlando, we have Jaime, we have a lot of people working on the generator itself, myself representing GeneXis. We also have Alejandro Silva, who is in charge of the Angular generator to integrate all of this. And for December, you will see that in the GeneXus download, you will be able to download a build that will already be integrated. As I said, this in terms of requirements and what is needed to work in this kind of platform is covered with the Angular prerequisites. So if you're interested or you have any associated projects, you can already install everything related to the Angular platform so that it's ready when this is released and available. And you can register on the WeChat platform, because precisely the authentication parts is one of the prerequisites for you to use the platform. This is a bit of what I wanted to tell you, what we've been doing specifically with WeChat mini programs. As we make progress, we will be tackling and targeting other platforms that are also important in this market. So, well, now, yeah, we can move on to the questions segment if you want.
Instancia de preguntas, pueden habilitar el micrófono y la cámara, así que...
Now, if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to open your microphones, turn on your cameras, and let's do it. Hello, how are you? Hello, Bruno. I had a question about the super apps and mini apps licensing aspect. I understand, according to what Luciano said just now, we will be having mini programs that only run on WeChat, right? Okay, cool. So I wanted to see the other side of the coin, which is how are these applications, these super apps and mini apps, how are they going to evolve? And well, definitely, what is the licensing going to be like? That is something that we are defining. There is that on the GeneXis super app and mini app generation, we have prototypes that we are trying. We're even trying a real case scenario. And what we want to do now is we want to make progress in this last bit of the year to maybe launch the beta version in the first quarter of next year. And well, that we need to decide whether that's going to be licensed separately or together. That's still, yet to be defined. So hopefully in the first quarter of next year, we will have defined that scheme. Then in the generation part, you have provision, which is something that we will also make available because that is all part of the component. So, super apps need to consume mini apps from somewhere, and that is a server that is also being developed. And our idea now is to tell you what we've been doing, and if you have any projects, you can tell us, and you can see when you can start participating in this beta program. Okay, another question on this, if I may. The authentication part that would be in charge of the super app whenever it's required by a mini app. Could you in a way be reusing, that in GUM, they're using this concept that is identity provider. Is that something that is that going to be the case? Well, it could. That could be an alternative. The idea is that the authentication in the super app, well, the only thing that the mini app will do is through an internal API, the super app, as part of the array of APIs that will offer to mini apps, one will be identity authentication, but that is an internal communication that is happening between mini apps and the super app, and it doesn't go to the server. And that is what we're thinking of first instance, but maybe, we may use an identity provider mechanism for the implementation, but I think it's going to be easier than that. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yep, the idea is that everything will be given by the super app, and that, identity processes or payments, as I was saying, that, the mini app will remain, for example, anonymous. They don't need to know who the user is or what methods of payments they will be using. It's just internal communication that will be running simultaneously. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I have one by Christian that says, hey, is there any test KB to download with any examples? Okay, yes, we are working on these trial KBs, trial knowledge bases. As a matter of fact, the example that I showed you is a super app that is based on the banking example and 3 mini apps that solve different scenarios. One is a purchase of a coffee. The other one is food trucks, and the other one is a ticket sale. And those 3 KBs will be available. These are the same that Luciano used for the mini program generation. That is a completely different architecture because these are native mobile applications, and Luciano's was a web application, but they are all part of the same knowledge base that we will be publishing in the examples list when we release the beta program. Okay, I have another question. I have a native application. How can I turn it into a super app? Okay, another thing that was mentioned before already is that apart from the fact that GeneXis will create an application as a super app, we will be making a component available that will be a sort of interpreter that allows you to have any native application that hasn't been developed in GeneXis may become a super app through this component. So we will give the components that allows to do all that dynamic loading of the applications, and that can be incorporated to any native application, whether it's iOS or Android. This is another product that we will be using, and that is already in alpha. Luis, you open your microphone. Go ahead. Yeah, Pablo has already answered. The question was if you could integrate, this development with other versions, or if you needed to develop it by GeneXus in GeneXus exclusively. So thanks. Anytime. Any other questions by the audience? Okay, I have one question by Federico that says, if I create a GeneXus super app, should those mini apps also be created by GeneXus? Yes, mini apps need to be developed with GeneXus, which, today, those mini apps, when they are generated, they need to have the format that will be interpreted by the super app. And that super app that is generated by GeneXus knows how to dynamically load applications that have been made with GeneXus. You can have any super app, not necessarily GeneXus, but many apps need to be GeneXus. Very good. I have another question by Francisco. The mini program term, is it only exclusive to WeChat? Well, not really. The term was coined in China. The backend definitely uses mini programs. The term was.
Jump o Quick App, pero sí, podemos decir,
and we
digamos.
also have sometimes Quick App to refer to them. But yeah, mini programs is a general term that we use for this kind of a super app. Okay, I have a question by Lucia. What is the super app and mini app architecture like in GeneXus? Okay, so as I was saying, we will have a super app. I think I had a presentation to show you. Jaime, maybe you have some slides to show. I don't know if you could show that on the screen to answer this question.
Son 18, ¿no? De la 18, 19, 20, creo.
I think it's slides 18, 19, 20. Yeah, that should help me to be clearer, considering that we have some time. Give me just a second. There you go. I decided to hide those just for the sake of time. Okay, so these are the three components that make up a super app solution with GeneXus. First, you have the super app application that, as I said, is an application that is a native app. Then you have the mini app generator, and then the way to know which mini apps can be called by super app is that provisioning server. So whoever creates the super app, a company is going to register in that provisioning server, and it will enable different mini apps that can work with that super app. Those that create those mini apps will catalog them in the server prior authorization by the super app owners. That will go through an approval mechanism. So the owner of the super app will say, okay, yeah, this application can be part of our super app. It's the same way that it works nowadays on Google Play or App Store. So the owners of the super app will approve or not that mini app for that version. And once that is approved, it will be made visible in the super app. And then you have another component that you can see in the bottom of the screen, which is APIs, because those that create a super app will be able to define an API, which is the one that they will interact with if the mini app needs a service from the super app, such as, for example, identity verification, payment clearance, and stuff like that. As you can see, that is the architecture solution. And it's the same as you're used to if you're developing mobile applications. A mini app is nothing but a traditional mobile applications, but it cannot be offline, of course, because it is dynamically loaded. But you can use all the resources available that you have nowadays to create an application. There are no limitations in that sense. And for the super app, yeah, because it could even be an offline application. In the following slide, what I was telling you just now is everything related to the development of the application, the three components that are part of it. And then when you deploy it, next, there you go. Once the super app is developed, I can publish it. If it's not for internal use in a corporation, I can publish it in the different stores. It will have its own backend server, just like any mobile application nowadays. The mini app also has its own backend server where the services that nourish that application, such as, we were talking about a cinema application that will be connecting to the database of the cinema that has all the information about films, and it's completely independent from the super app. And once that is developed, it is cataloged in that provisioning server. And so deploying will be easier in that server. That is something that we are developing. At first, we could be talking about a SaaS service, or maybe you can install it on premise, depending, well, we will assess the different scenarios when the time comes, but it will be cataloged and will be part of an approval mechanism for the super app. So you can see that the architecture solutions are similar to mobile apps nowadays, and you just need to add a couple of components to integrate everything, and the possibility that it always needs to be dynamically loaded. That was a question that you had, Aníbal, right? I hope that that I was able to answer it. Aníbal, you're muted. Yes, I think so. Very good. We have a question by Sophia now. Do super apps always need to be open? I don't exactly know what you mean by open. Probably open to the general public. Oh, well, no. It can totally be an internal application. It doesn't need to be published in the App Store or Play Store, if that's what you mean. Imagine that you have an organization and you want to have a super app where you will add different services for the members of that organization, for the different collaborators. And instead of developing one big application, you can have an incremental development where you will start with super apps and then some mini apps, and you incorporate some services. The advantage of this is that you can contextualize it. That is, different members of the organization can access different mini apps and others can't. So you can give a much more customized service for the different members. And this is maybe an application that is being run within the organization. It doesn't necessarily need to be made available to the general public. We're generally talking about internal applications or applications that have a great user community, such as payments, or maybe I think another classic example is governmental stuff, like government apps or local government apps, that they have one super app with the different services available to the general public that are made available through this super app, and that they're really well contextualized, that you can have access to that mini app depending on your location, on where you work, on what kind of company you have, and you give them much more customized information. You don't need to have a huge application that comprises a lot of stuff that you won't be using much, So I think that is the greatest advantage, and this is a great difference with what's happening in the West so far with the super app concept. We see that nowadays we have a lot of companies that want to serve the wave and call themselves super apps, but they're nothing different than just big apps. They call themselves super apps because they offer a wide variety of services, but they're just like large applications. They don't have this possibility of dynamically loading different mini apps, which is the case for super apps in China. This is the scenario that we are aiming for with GeneXis. We are talking about dynamically loading and not just creating a huge app with a number of services. Okay, we have a question by Bruno that says, could mini apps be loaded by proximity? For example, I go to a shopping center and you get notifications for you to use the different mini apps for the different shops in the shopping center. Yes, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly a typical scenario. Remember that whenever you have a super app working, you have an API that's connecting with a provisioning server to get the mini apps for the super app. And this is all through a subscription mechanism, a security mechanism, not to show other mini apps. And this API, this search will have different ways of being filtered, how you want to load the content. Maybe you want to do that with text or with location. If you have, enabled your location with your phone, and you can work with the ones that are nearby. So perhaps that could be the case. You go into a shopping center and you have all the mini apps available for that shopping center. This is a classic scenario that you could overcome with this. Okay, I'll have another one by Juan. What practical application examples do you have? Yeah, I think a couple were mentioned. I think the payments one is one of the classics. Alipay in China used to be basically a payment application, and it ended up becoming a super app because you can incorporate a wide number of services and you can take advantage of the community. You have the information, the payment information for a user, and the services can use that information, and you don't need to register that information every single time in each of the mini applications. So, for example, you have today your Uber, your Cabify app, your food delivery app, and you always need to go through the same steps. You download the app, you register, you enter your payment methods, credit card, debit card, and no, with the super app, it's that information is going to be given, and it's going to make things much more easy. It's going to be much easier. And then you have the government examples that I told you about, or any corporation that wants to develop an application in an incremental way. I think that also comprises this in a very good way. Always thinking about the user as the center of what we do, right? Of how to make all of these services available to the user in the best possible way, and in a way that is customized, that is 100% user focused, for it to be simple, straightforward, and that they don't get lost in a number of functionalities that they could get through maybe bigger applications. Adding to what Pablo was saying, this is a concept that is just coming to the West, and it's going to take us some time for us to take it in. But it's good to have this kind of events where you can discuss these scenarios. There are some very obvious scenarios and interesting scenarios, which are, for example, sector leaders such as marketplace or shipping companies or financial companies, healthcare providers. You know that they have an already installed huge user database, and they could easily become super apps. They're great candidates for this. And any institution, in a way, that has a large user base can be using this. For example, GeneXus in Montevideo is located in a tech park that has a number of companies and thousands of employees. And so maybe the technological park where GeneXus is located could have a super app for anyone that works in that place, can have access to, I don't know, car washing apps or transportation apps. The same thing applies to students in schools, for instance. You have the students, you have the parents, and you can have mini apps in the schools that could be for uniform purchases or transportation services for children or private tutories. So you have a whole world of opportunities that opens up in front of your eyes. Okay, we have a question by Francisco that says, can't mini apps be permanently hosted in the super app? yes, many apps are run, and once you stop using them, they are deleted. They remain for a while in the cache if you want to download it, but the user will have the chance to, for example, mark it as a favorite for it to be always visible at the top. But probably if you're using it on a regular basis, you will be able to pick that from the cache automatically, which is going to make it faster to download. But otherwise, it's going to be downloaded only when you need to. But yeah, you could favorite for it to be faster, but that is more about the UI and the UX of how you want your super app to be. It's part of these are design decisions when you're designing your super app. Another important thing that comes with this concept is that in the case of those scenarios that we said, we have a user community, so different partners can create mini apps. That gives you the advantage that you can maybe publish your applications that are available in, on the store, but you also want your cinema application that is available in the store to be a mini app in a super app. So you're accessing a community that is already established, and that makes the development faster and easier. You have a lot of components such as user identity or payment methods, which are sensitive information. And it's difficult to manage that. And so that development is going to be easier. The idea is that the mini app development will be faster, as a matter of fact. Okay, any other questions from the audience? Okay, very good. So if we have no further questions, we will begin to close the session. Thank you so much, Pablo, Luciano, Jaime. But before we, yeah, sorry, Anibal? Just suggestions. Just a suggestion. In the other Ask Me Anything sessions, you often copy links on the chat. If you have someone else that wants to go to the webinar site in GeneXus to take a look at this session afterwards, you don't have the links that you posted on the chat. So you have it while you're in the live event, but you can't find it afterwards. So why not, when you write the description for the Ask Me Anythings in the GeneXus website, why don't you paste the links as well there? Yeah, absolutely. Great suggestion. It would be super interesting, Luis. Thank you. Yeah, Anil, just before you close the webinar, I'd like to say that today we are in the project analysis phase. We have no practical cases implemented. So we're inviting the company community to come to us and let us know and discuss different cases if they're interested, okay? So thanks a lot, Aníbal. Now, yes, before we close the session, remember that the old forums that we had with GeneXus are on read-only mode. Nowadays, we're working exclusively with Stack Overflow. You will find the link on the chat, and we will have that also in the description of the Ask Me Anything session, as Luis suggested. And well, all the conversations are happening on Stack Overflow, okay? So we have 2 AMAs left. The last one will be on the 16th. We will be talking about GeneXus's roadmap. So without further ado, we will be looking forward to seeing you next week for the last 2 AMAs of this cycle. Thanks a lot. See you around.